My name is Emily Carter, and I was never the favorite. In my family, everything was about the picture. The Christmas cards, the dinner parties, the way we smiled just right in public. My mom wore pearls even to grocery stores, and my dad made sure the lawn was mowed in perfect diagonals. But behind the polish, I always felt like the extra piece tacked on, out of place, not quite right. My sister, Caroline, was everything they dreamed of. Blonde, graceful, honor roll every year, homecoming queen, married a corporate lawyer at 24. They called her their miracle. Me? I was the messy one. The quiet one. The one who didn't look good in pastels. I liked climbing trees more than ballet, and I read war memoirs under the table at Thanksgiving. They said it was just a phase. But it wasn't. My mom used to sigh every time I came downstairs in cargo pants or scuffed sneakers. She'd say things like, "That's not how young ladies present themselves." And my dad, he'd glance at me over the newspaper and mumble, "What's she trying to prove?" Caroline always giggled, like I was just playing some harmless tomboy game, but I wasn't playing. I didn't want to be a debutante. I wanted to be seen. Not for being pretty, not for being polite, but for being strong, for doing something that mattered. I didn't say that out loud. I just stayed quiet and waited. I watched how they lit up when Caroline walked into a room. I noticed how they avoided eye contact when I spoke up. I knew where I stood. The pressure to become someone I wasn't started young. My mom signed me up for pageants, etiquette classes, dance recitals. I hated all of it. Once, at 12, I cut my hair short and wore a JROTC shirt to school. When I got home, she said I looked like a boy trying to get attention. I told her I liked how it felt. She rolled her eyes and said, "No man will take you seriously like that." I remember thinking, good. Maybe I don't want to be taken seriously by that kind of man. The day I turned 18, I didn't throw a party. I went to the recruiter's office. I didn't even tell them until the papers were signed. When I handed my dad the envelope, he didn't say a word for a full minute. Then he just said, "Well, I guess college wasn't an option." My mom cried. Caroline said she didn't get it. I didn't expect them to. Joining the military wasn't about escaping them. It was about finding something real. A place where how you looked didn't matter nearly as much as what you could do under pressure. I wanted structure. I wanted discipline. I wanted to feel like my presence had weight. Looking back, I don't think they ever meant to make me feel small. But they did. And when you grow up invisible, you start to crave places where being seen means more than just being admired. You want to earn it. I wasn't their golden girl, but I was determined to make myself someone worth saluting. The first weeks in basic training nearly broke me. It wasn't just the early mornings or the endless drills. It was the silence at night, when everyone else seemed to belong, and I felt like I had snuck into someone else's life. I didn't know how to speak the language of grit yet. I was still carrying the weight of being overlooked, and it slowed me down. But something changed during our third week. I was the last to finish a 10-mile ruck. My pack had slipped, my feet were blistered, and I fell behind. Everyone else had already made it back to the trucks. I was sure I'd be sent home. Then I saw him standing at the finish line. Colonel Bryant. He wasn't supposed to be there. He watched me limp the last 200 yards and didn't say a word. When I reached him, he nodded once and walked away. The next morning, my name was on the list for advanced leadership training. Colonel Bryant was the kind of man who didn't waste praise. His words were clean, sharp, and rare. But when he gave you attention, you felt it. He pulled me aside once after a training simulation and said, "You think you're invisible, Carter? You're not. You just haven't been seen by the right people yet." That line stuck with me more than anything my parents ever said. He challenged me harder than anyone, gave me extra drills, more pressure, tougher feedback. At first, I thought he didn't like me. But slowly, I realized he was trying to make me strong enough to stop needing approval. He never coddled, he demanded. And I rose to meet it. That's when I met Alex. We were both assigned to the same logistics unit. He was tall, quiet, the kind of guy who fixed your gear without asking just because he noticed. We didn't click right away. We respected each other's space. But during a field operation in pouring rain, my radio failed. While everyone else panicked, he got mine working again using a spare part from his own kit. After that, we talked more. It wasn't dramatic. No sweeping moments or movie scenes. Just shared meals, tired jokes, and calm presence. We built something steady. I didn't trust easy. But Alex earned it in small ways. He never flinched when I got promoted before him. He never corrected me in front of others. When I froze during a night drill, remembering my father's voice mocking me, he simply stood beside me until I moved again. Colonel Bryant saw it too. One day, he caught us cleaning equipment and said, "You two remind me of a good unit I once led. No ego, just loyalty." That meant more to me than anything I'd heard growing up. In the military, I learned I didn't need to be the loudest to lead. I didn't need to wear heels or pearls to be strong. I found people who measured worth by action, not by how well you smiled at dinner. I learned to stand tall even when shaking inside. And I started to believe I could be more than the girl my family never truly saw. It wasn't about medals or rank. It was about being surrounded by people who showed up when it counted. People who knew what it meant to carry someone else's weight when they couldn't carry it alone. That was family. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had one. The day of the wedding felt more like a test than a celebration. We set everything up in the backyard, behind the base housing unit. Folding chairs lined the grass. White string lights stretched across two poles we hammered into the ground ourselves. The cake was from a local bakery, small but perfect, and our music came from a Bluetooth speaker. It wasn't fancy, but it was honest. Every piece of it was made with care. Alex had been calm all morning. He ironed his dress uniform 3 times and still asked if it looked okay. I told him he looked like someone I'd married twice. He smiled and kissed my forehead. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop checking the time. I kept hoping my parents would show up early. I kept hoping they'd surprise me, maybe with a hug or even a real smile. But when they arrived, nothing about them had changed. My mom wore beige like she was headed to a funeral. My dad stayed close behind, arms crossed, eyes darting around like he was embarrassed to be there. My sister walked in, 10 minutes later, sunglasses still on, chewing gum like she was killing time before her next appointment. They said, "Hello," briefly. No compliments, no emotion, just a glance, a nod, and silence. I asked my dad if he was ready to walk me in. He looked me over, from my boots to the ribbons on my uniform. Then he said, "You're not even wearing a real dress. I can't walk you down looking like that." My heart didn't drop. It cracked, slow and quiet. I turned and walked away before he could see my face. There was no time to cry. No place to hide. The music started too soon, and I had to step forward. Alone. My heels sank a little into the grass, and my chest tightened. But I kept moving. Every step felt heavier than the last, like I was carrying every moment. They made me feel small. Every comment, every laugh, every time they chose Caroline and left me in the background, I could feel their eyes on me. I could hear a whisper from my mom. My sister's quiet chuckle. None of it mattered. Or at least, I tried to pretend it didn't. My palms were sweating, and my throat felt like it had closed. But my posture didn't break. My uniform held me up, even when my heart tried to fold. Alex was waiting under the arbor. He looked at me like I was everything. And in that moment, I held on to his eyes. I needed them more than I realized. They told me I was enough. They reminded me why I had made it this far, why I had survived the childhood of silence, the weight of being invisible, and the sting of being treated like an outsider in my own family. When I reached him, he took my hand with both of his. I heard someone sniffle behind me, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The ceremony began. The words blurred together. My voice shook once during the vows, but I didn't apologize. I stood tall and finished them. It wasn't the wedding I dreamed of as a kid, but it was the one I chose as a woman, surrounded by people who saw me, respected me, and stood by me without conditions. And even though I stood there alone at the start, I didn't feel alone when it ended. I felt brave. The music had barely started when I stepped forward. My fingers were clenched around the bouquet, so tight my knuckles had gone white. I kept my eyes fixed on Alex at the altar, because I couldn't bear to look left or right. The faces in the crowd felt too loud in their silence. My boots brushed the grass, and I could hear the slight squeak of my metal shifting against the fabric of my uniform. Then it happened. A voice, clear and sharp, broke through the quiet. 10 Hut. It wasn't shouted. It was declared. Every soldier present stood at once. Even the civilians felt the shift in the air. I froze mid-step. My heart stopped. I knew that voice. Colonel Bryant stepped into view like the earth had moved aside for him. Full dress uniform, ribbons across his chest, cap tucked under his arm. He didn't scan the crowd. He didn't smile. He walked straight toward me, like this moment belonged to no one else. The air tightened. My breath got stuck halfway. I didn't know whether to salute or cry. He stopped in front of me and looked me over, not like he was judging, but like he was confirming something he already knew. Then he reached up and adjusted the silver medal that had turned slightly on my chest. His hand moved with precision, just like always. He stepped back, half a pace. "You don't walk alone, Carter. Not today." I felt the tears rising, but I blinked hard. He wasn't finished. I wouldn't miss the wedding of the officer who pulled 3 of my men out under fire. That's not something you forget. That's someone you show up for. He brought his heels together, stood tall, and saluted me. Everything stopped. The crowd was silent. Even my father stood. My mother dropped her sunglasses into her lap. My sister leaned forward like she was watching something she couldn't make sense of. But I understood it. Every second of it. That salute wasn't for show. It was an act of honor, carved from years of expectation, earned one brutal mile at a time. It said more than any speech or toast ever could. Colonel Bryant held the salute for a full 3 seconds, then stepped aside. His eyes never left mine as he nodded once and returned to the crowd. No fanfare, no applause, just quiet reverence. I felt taller. Not because I needed validation, but because I finally believed it. I believed I was worthy of being seen. Not as someone's daughter or sister. Not as the girl who wore boots to a wedding. But as someone who had faced fire and brought others home. Someone who had led with strength and stayed standing. I took another step forward. The music started again, but softer now. It felt different. Fuller somehow. Like it wasn't just notes anymore, but a heartbeat. Alex stood straighter. His eyes were wet. He had seen it too. The rest of the walk felt lighter. The bouquet didn't shake in my hands. I didn't care if my family whispered or stared. The only thing I felt was the weight of respect, not from people who measured worth in silk and status, but from someone who knew what sacrifice really looked like. I reached Alex, and before the officiant could speak, he leaned close and whispered, "That was the proudest moment of my life." I smiled, not just because I was happy, but because I knew something had changed. The wedding wasn't just a ceremony anymore. It was a reckoning, a quiet, powerful answer to every moment I had ever felt invisible. And it all started with 10 Hut. The ceremony ended with a round of quiet clapping, but no one really moved right away. People were still processing what had just happened. The chairs creaked as guests shifted in their seats, unsure if it was okay to speak. I turned toward the reception area with Alex beside me. He held my hand without needing to say anything. That gesture grounded me more than any words could have. As we walked past the guests, I caught sight of my family. My father sat stiff in his chair, his arms folded tightly across his chest. My mother stared ahead, her face unreadable. Caroline was the only one who looked at me directly. Her expression flickered between surprise and something I didn't quite recognize. Maybe curiosity, maybe something else. I didn't stop for them. The reception tables were simple. Tablecloths from the commissary, centerpieces made by my squad from scrap wood and wildflowers. The food came in aluminum trays. No one cared. We laughed over barbecue, toasted with plastic cups, and danced like no one was watching. It wasn't perfect, but it was full of life. And for the first time at a family event, I didn't feel like I had to pretend to be someone else. Later, while I was refilling drinks near the cooler, my mother came over. She didn't say hello. She stood beside me for a moment, watching the crowd. Then she said, "He saluted you like you were somebody." I didn't answer right away. I just handed her a bottle of water. She took it, still staring out across the yard. Then she asked, "Why didn't you ever tell us you did all that?" I looked at her and said, "You never asked." She blinked but didn't respond. I didn't push it. When I turned to walk away, Caroline caught me near the snack table. She didn't smile, just stepped in close and said, "That was different. You looked real up there." I met her eyes. For once, she wasn't trying to win the moment. She looked small in her designer shoes. I said, "I've always been real, just not to you." She didn't follow me. The rest of the night unfolded without tension. My unit gave sloppy toasts. Someone dropped the cake. We laughed until our faces hurt. I danced with Alex to a song we didn't even like. Colonel Bryant stayed long enough to shake every hand, then disappeared as quietly as he came. That felt right. He was never the type to linger. As I sat under the string lights later, my boots kicked into the dirt. I thought about how different this day turned out to be. It wasn't the family wedding I once imagined. But it was mine. And I walked through it, without needing to prove anything. Not to them. Not anymore. By the time the sun dipped low behind the trees, the backyard glowed in soft gold. Laughter rolled through the space like music, louder than the playlist humming through our little speaker. Plates were half full, drinks were being passed around, and someone had started a line dance in the grass. No one cared if they got the steps wrong. No one judged. It felt like joy in its most unpolished, perfect form. I stood off to the side for a moment, just watching. My uniform was wrinkled now. My hair had slipped loose. But I didn't care. I felt more beautiful in that moment than I ever had in any mirror. Alex came up behind me and slipped his hand into mine. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The way he held my hand steady, grounded, present, said everything. He pulled me gently onto the makeshift dance floor. We swayed awkwardly in our boots. His rhythm was terrible. I couldn't stop smiling. Every time I looked up at him, I saw someone who didn't just love me but believed in me. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove myself. I just let it be. Someone tapped a spoon against a glass and called for a toast. The chatter quieted. Colonel Bryant stood near the edge of the crowd, still in full dress uniform. His presence alone was enough to command silence. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lift a glass. He just looked out at the group and said, "We show up for our own, especially when no one else does." Then he nodded toward me and added, "There's strength you can train, and then there's strength you're born with." Carter never had to be loud to lead. She just had to keep showing up. It was short, but it landed deep. A few people clapped. A few more raised their cups. I just stood there, heart pounding, unsure if I should cry or salute. Alex leaned down and kissed the top of my head. I rested my forehead against his chest and let myself feel everything at once. The rest of the night faded into a blur of hugs, stories, and quiet goodbyes. The lights stayed up long after the music stopped. Some people lingered to help clean. Others just didn't want to leave. As we packed the last of the decorations, I looked around one more time. The chairs, the lights, the faces of people who didn't share my blood but had carried me when I needed it most. This was my family. Not by birth, by choice, by fire, by love. I didn't get the wedding I grew up imagining. I got something better. I married with my head high, surrounded by people who saw me, stood by me, and reminded me every day that I was enough. And finally, I believed it too.